Dead Rising is one of the most unique AAA titles I've played. It's funny that the more time that has gone by since it came out, the more that statement rings true. Coming out in August of 2006 for the Xbox 360, it was not only one of the first games to make people question whether text can be too small, it also convinced many to buy an HD TV in the first place. The premise of Dead Rising is zombies in a mall survive. There is a lot to love and plenty to dislike, but one thing is for certain, we are all going to feel closer by the end of it. I'll go over everything about Dead Rising in detail, so I will, like usual, separate the video into a few chapters. If you've never played this game and are vaguely interested, I would say watching until the end of the Freedom section is probably fine. If you prefer figuring out things on your own, maybe only watch the overview and see if you're still interested. The last section is titled Technical Difficulties, which is where I'll lump all of my miscellaneous complaints in addition to the actual technical difficulties of the game. Let's get started. The game begins with Frank, a photojournalist, riding in a helicopter on his way to a mall in a small town. You're dropped off and you basically get to spend 3 days in this mall. The helicopter will arrive on the 4th day at noon. That's your only escape. Time moves at its own pace throughout the game, and to my knowledge, nothing besides loading screens and cutscenes stop it. In that time, you can progress through the story. They're called cases, and you need to be somewhere or help someone by a certain time, otherwise they expire. If they expire, in this playthrough you can't continue with the story anymore. You can load to a previous save, or you can keep playing, which is what I recommend, and I'll explain why later on. Saving can only be done in one of the many bathrooms around the mall, in the safe room, or sometimes you'll be prompted to save after a case is completed. In addition to the zombies all over the mall, there are also psychopaths, which is the word the game uses for bosses. Just people who went crazy and took advantage of the situation to kill other humans. It's a trope you'd expect going into a zombie-themed piece of media. There are plenty of humans that aren't crazy, and they act as an open-world collectible as you go along. When you find them, you're encouraged to talk to and convince them to return to the safe room with you. It then plays like an escort mission. Beyond surviving, doing the main story, rescuing survivors, and killing psychopaths, you can also take pictures. Taking pictures is mostly useful for achievements and gaining experience points to level up. The mall is split up into a few distinct areas. The Paradise Plaza is basically your hub outside of the security room, and is where you'll be spending a lot of your time. The Leisure Park is an open outdoor area that connects to the North Plaza and Food Court, as well as the entrance ramp into the maintenance tunnels. The North Plaza houses a few unique areas like the grocery store, pharmacy, gun shop, and a garden center. There aren't a whole lot of stores here, as most of the plaza is under construction. Wonderland Plaza houses a roller coaster in the middle, along with a play area underneath. There's plenty of stores all over the plaza as well. The food court consists of a few food areas, and is the smallest of the indoor plazas. Alfresca Plaza, which I suppose is technically outdoors as well, has a few stores and restaurants around, and even a gym. The entrance plaza doesn't house much besides a few stores. There's also the underground maintenance tunnel, which connects to every area if you have the key for it, and the movie theater, which is a side addition to the Paradise Plaza with no other entrance. While you're exploring these sections of the mall, you'll get treated to a fantastic soundtrack that completely goes against the seriousness of killing zombies. It would be a disservice to the people who haven't played the game to not let them hear some of it. There's a stylish country-sounding tune, a phenomenal saxophone experience, a classic elevator-style piano song, a poppy dance banger, a groovy jam with some nonsensical lyrics, and finally the emotional ballad that really puts things in perspective. I think it's interesting how, even with all the chaos of the zombie outbreak, there's a quiet and calm stillness present in the mall. The music helps accentuate this feeling. Like when you're standing in Columbian Roost in Paradise Plaza with barely any zombies, and just for a moment it feels like you've managed to be the last person in a regular mall during closing time. I think a lot of the credit has to go to the mall itself and how much effort was put in by the developers to really make it feel like a real place. It's worth noting that for a game like this, it might not have even been necessary. Not often are you safe to stare at the scenery and critique if it's plausible or not, as zombies will always be a threat and you will most likely be busy with story, survivors, or boss fights. Even though they probably didn't need to, the developers still made sure every plaza felt distinct, every store looked at least slightly different, and made sure all of them had some kind of interactable object or unique asset to set it apart. I didn't remember seeing many of the same assets in the first place, but when I went back looking for it, I was more impressed. The gym has its own fitness schedule, whiteboard, and fitness-themed posters on the wall. It's of course the only place with the dumbbells, barbells, and punching bags. The treadmills even work, and if you walk on them long enough, they give you experience points. Same with the punching bags. The antique shop has its own very distinct decor. It's one of the only stores where you need to open the door to get in, and it houses the battle axe, a powerful and unique weapon. There are 5 different bookstores in the mall. It would have been so easy for it to be a copy and paste job, but they all have their own layout, color scheme, and sometimes even different shelves altogether. They also not only have a ton of images on the cover of their books, but their aisles have their respective categories at the ends of them. When you're in certain coffee shops, you can see their prices for drinks on the chalkboard. Even if you don't consciously realize it, this sort of thing goes a long way in immersing yourself in the world. What's even better is the entire mall is internally consistent and self-contained. There are advertisement posters in every plaza, but they're all for stores and products that are in the mall. They don't even have the same framing or size, they're distinct to each plaza. When the cultists appear in the mall, they put up their ritual posters all over for you to read. There's an outrageous amount of posters in the mall, and it makes what might have looked like a barren blank video game wall look like an employee of the store put those up themselves. Even the clock I found in the gym has the same time as the watch Frank has. I love all these details. There's only 3 things about the mall that don't make sense to me. One is the fact that there's a grocery store in the back of a mall. I wouldn't think that would be a place to get your groceries. Maybe if it was near the front, sure. It just doesn't seem practical to me. The second and third kind of tie together. What if it rains or snows? If you come in from the entrance plaza, you would need to go through either Alfresca, which is outdoors, or through Paradise Plaza and Leisure Park to get to the food court, Wonderland Plaza, or North Plaza. North Plaza itself doesn't connect to any indoor area but Wonderland, so if it started raining or something, well, you're gonna have to tough it out and walk along the strange pathways in the park. Now this obviously works just fine for gameplay. This is me being pedantic, I know, but if anything, this shows you how great the mall was designed. Those are the only things I could even think of. Everything else is great. The zombies deserve praise as well. Their AI and behaviors were a constant source of surprise as I went along. If you've seen a few zombie movies or played a few games, you know there are a few distinct types. Whether they're strong or weak, slow or fast, smart or dumb, is really all up to the creators and their vision. I think Dead Rising managed to strike the perfect balance of inept and deadly. When you walk into an area, there will be plenty of zombies, but eventually you learn to catch on to which ones are more of a threat than others. Thankfully it isn't as cut and dry as a different colored zombie or clothing styles. It's mostly based on their posture and body language. Some will stand there staring at a wall, some will limp over to you, some will fall over randomly, some run for you right away and don't let up. It causes you to stay engaged with the game even though you might just be going from place to place. Finding the best path through if you have no intention of killing any of them is pretty satisfying. Their behaviors without you as a focal point are even more interesting. Zombies will crave human flesh above all else. After you defeat Cliff, you can see a horde of zombies surrounding his dead body. Those zombies no longer care about you, as an easier source of food is present. When a chunk of meat, a hand, is on the ground, zombies will be drawn to pick it up. I don't quite understand their desire to do this, but without fail, they are enamored by it. Going away from the mall itself, the design of the game's UI and HUD matches the theme of Frank being a photojournalist. The menu has a globe rotating around like it's the backdrop for a newsroom. The loading screens sometimes show you skills Frank can do, but they do it in a really clever way. It's on a photoreel, which not only aligns with photography, it shows the beginning and ending of the move in an easy-to-digest fashion. All the side missions are called scoops, and anytime you get an achievement, the text scrolls by at the bottom of the screen like a breaking news alert. It works the same way when you level up as well. Speaking of leveling up, leveling up is critical to surviving in Dead Rising. You begin the game extremely slow and weak, you lack pockets, you can't wrestle, and you're overall just pathetic. Leveling up increases your inventory space, your max health, your non-weapon damage, throwing distance, running speed, and unlocks many fighting skills for Frank to use. So not only at high levels can Frank take more damage before dying, carry way more items, which means more weapons and healing, but he also hits much harder and has combat skills he can use. Level 1 he can just punch, which won't ever get the job done. As you gain levels, you learn to zombie ride, knee drop, double lariat, Irish whip, big swing, military press, bulldog, German suplex, wall kick, disembowel, somersault kick, and even zombie walk. Some of these offer utility, like zombie riding over a horde of zombies to get by, or knee drop from a high elevation to avoid damage. Some are just fun to do, like zombie walk to blend in with the zombies, or big swing a zombie around to make Frank dizzy at the end of it. And some of these are just better than weapons you can find in the game, like the double lariat, which takes a huge chunk of health from enemies and knocks them down, the disembowel, which kills zombies in one go, or the somersault kick, which decapitates zombies instantly. This is why I mentioned you should keep playing if you messed up the main story. Leveling up is so incredibly important. Early on, nearly everything is a threat, while after a couple dozen level ups, you can take out any horde of zombies without too much trouble. Just getting to places on time or running from enemies is so much easier when you can run quicker too. I would say running speed is the most significant change, as when you first start, Frank lumbers around in a realistic way, but once your running speed is leveled up, you can basically jog right by everything. The experience points of Dead Rising are called PP, and you get it in a multitude of ways. Every 50 zombie kills gets you some, as well as a large bonus when reaching a big round number. Killing psychopaths nets you quite a lot, as well as taking a dramatic picture with your camera. Since Frank is a photographer, he has his camera with him at all times, even holding onto it while he runs. A really nice detail. The game even has a dedicated trigger to aim the camera, so it must have been a pretty big focus in development. There's some special stickers in the mall that grant a lot of experience randomly, and some events with survivors that can happen incredibly quickly and be nearly impossible to capture the first time it happens. The other big thing that gets you experience is escorting survivors. I think they approached how it gives you experience in a really clever way. You get a lot of experience by bringing them back to the safe room, but even convincing them to join you in the first place gets you some. We'll get to it later on, but escorting survivors successfully is very difficult. This extra experience might get players who know they don't have a chance to escort them back successfully to at least give it a shot. If you're fine with them dying anyway, it's never a bad idea to convince them to tag along. They might die along the way, but hey, who knows, maybe their AI will be able to function with an adult brain instead of a toddler's. Interactivity can come in many forms. Where Dead Rising is above all of its contemporaries is interacting with the environment. Being able to use nearly every object as a weapon places you closer to the mindset of actually trying to survive a zombie outbreak. It reminds me of Shaun of the Dead, where they use records, random household objects, and cricket bats to fight off zombies. I think a lot of people, myself included, wanted to have that kind of freedom in a video game, and Dead Rising answered that call. Even ignoring the zombie influence, barely any other game around this time had anything close to this, and by the next decade, when you could begin to interact with objects lying around, it was generally worthless. In Dead Rising, it's one of the main attractions. You can use TVs, which makes sense as it's on the box art for the game, guns, obviously, slicing zombies up with a chainsaw, mowing them down with a lawnmower, twirling a zombie around on an excavator to hit other zombies, You can stick them with a shower head, watching as the blood pours out like a literal fountain. You can stick a blocky helmet on them, a horsey head, teddy bear head, or even stick another zombie's hand on their face instead. Gym equipment like dumbbells and barbells are fair game. You can use a toy laser sword, a toy Mega Man shooting arm, and a bicycle that you can learn to jump with. In the game, there are a lot of magazines that Frank can read and hold on to that gives him a bonus. One grants you the ability to jump with a bicycle, plenty of them make certain weapon types last longer before breaking, one helps you learn Japanese, which allows you to rescue 2 people. Or you could just decide to throw the book itself at zombies, or throw a cash register at zombies, throw potted plants at zombies, throw CDs, jewelry, and soda cans at zombies. They even slip and fall with pearls or gumballs on the ground. If you threw an oil bottle at them, they will sip on the oil that splashed on the ground as well. There's plenty of sports-related items you can use as weapons as well, such as a soccer ball, bowling ball, golf club, hockey stick, baseball bat, flying disc. Want some more weapon examples? 2x4, lead pipe, nightstick, shovel, shelves, plywood, giant teddy bear, toy blocks, medieval battle axe. I'll stop listing them, but it's absolutely insane. This is one of the biggest selling points back in the 2006 adverts, and for good reason. All of the items have durability, so they will eventually break. This helps keep the threat of dying from zombies present, as you can't use the best weapons forever. It also incentivizes you to use less than ideal choices like a handbag or a teddy bear when you're desperate. In terms of the best weapons, I personally have a few go-tos that I try to always keep at least one of them on me at all times. The mini chainsaw, the shotgun, the katana, the battle axe, and Queen Bee. The mini chainsaws you can get from the clown psychopath in the Wonderland area. One respawns every time you leave and come back, or even when a cutscene plays. This weapon is basically overpowered. Every boss fight save a select few becomes a breeze with this. Near here is also a bookstore that has a magazine which lets you to hold on to edged weapons, this one included, 3 times as long before breaking. A combo that will surely keep you safe nearly the whole game. The shotgun is found in the gun store. When you come here, usually there will be a boss fight with Cletus. If you come late enough in the game, he won't be there and you can grab shotguns without hassle. Guns in this game have an aim function, or if you shoot without aiming, it will blind fire in the direction you're standing. Standing still gets you the best results, usually a headshot, while running and shooting gets them in their chest. The shotgun is pretty good for both aiming and blind firing. The katana and battle axe work in a similar way to the chainsaws. Strong, can slice zombies up, hurts bosses a lot, but these ones are easier to acquire. The battle axe is in the Entrance Plaza antique shop, and the katana is either in the North Plaza blade shop, or right at the start in Paradise Plaza. The Queen Bee is obtained by killing zombies that are loopy looking, grab the Queen Bee that was in their brain, throw it on the ground, and watch every zombie in the area collapse. This is basically a grenade you can use in tight situations. Going back to the freedom and exploration of Dead Rising, Frank can jump and climb. I'm of the opinion that jumping is nearly a requirement when wanting to craft a fun world to explore. So many times have I come across dumb barriers that hinder my desire to care about exploring. I've discussed this in my Luigi's Mansion 3 video, but this sort of thing is in nearly every third-person adventure game out there. In Dead Rising, there are a select few areas where that's a thing, but on the whole, you can jump and climb anywhere you want to go. Vertical freedom isn't discussed as often as it really should. Being able to climb and drop to locations is integral in my mind for that feeling of free movement. Climbing up the side of the warehouse to get into the door instead of having to take the elevator full of zombies is nice, but what's even better is jumping down that same height to get back down quickly. Being able to jump over the rails on the second floor of Wonderland and Entrance Plaza instead of taking the stairs conforms to my sometimes lack of patience. In Paradise Plaza, I generally walk up the stairs to grab some orange juice. Thankfully, I can jump off the ledge onto the awning, grab a katana that's conveniently stashed there, and jump off again. In this example, you can not only use the verticality to your advantage to escape from the upper floor quickly like before, it's encouraged to find a secret and strong weapon. This isn't the only time you could stumble upon some secrets. What good is a semi-open world like a mall without rewarding exploration and secret hunting? There's one more weapon that's extremely useful, and that's the submachine gun. These are only found in secret locations across the mall. There's one in Alfresca Plaza in the fountain, In the Wonderland Plaza if you jump off the Space Rider at the right time, landing on the roof of a playhouse. In the Paradise Plaza on the blue awning after you walk across some narrow ledges. There's one in Leisure Park up in a tree. You need to throw something at it to get it to fall down. And in the Entrance Plaza hidden in a palm tree. A few of these, like the fountain and awning one, and maybe even the Wonderland Plaza one, I could see people accidentally finding, but the Entrance Plaza and Leisure Park ones, where they're on a tree, I don't know. I'm not sure if I would have ever found those without looking it up. There's another really interesting way Dead Rising encourages player discovery. You can mix consumable items in a blender and get certain juices. You can get nectar, which attracts queens and spawns more zombies with queens in them. Quick Step, which makes you outrageously fast. Untouchable, which prevents zombies from grabbing you as you walk by. They can still smack you, however. There's also Spitfire, which turns your spit into a damaging projectile. So all in all, even though Dead Rising didn't advertise itself as an open-world game, it's one of the most freeing experiences on offer. You're able to interact with nearly every object, nearly none of the NPCs are protected or off-limits, you can ignore the story and play the game your own way, there are barely any blocked-off areas or invisible walls, there are secrets galore, and knowing where they are can help you survive, or just help you have a good time. Like I said, the bosses in this game are referred to as psychopaths, but I'll probably just refer to them as bosses throughout the video. In general, I don't think the bosses are great, but they at least offer a challenge for the most part. I will discuss the fights that are required for the story mode in the story section of the video. Most of the fights come down to what weapon you have at the time. The majority of the bosses are a cakewalk with a mini chainsaw, and initially I had gone through everything with it, but I figured that wouldn't be fair to the game as a representation of its content, so I went through again with different weapons to see what they could offer. Before I begin, I have to say, another awesome thing about the effort Capcom put into this game, all the bosses have their own theme music that plays. There's a few that are really good, and I'll play them when we get to them. Some of them also grant a unique weapon afterwards. I'll list those once we get to them as well. The first optional bosses you're likely to encounter are the convicts in Leisure Park. First of all, their music is great. Have a listen. That's probably the best part about these guys though, as they're one of the worst parts about the early game. I have no issue with them the first time. They're tricky, their AI is horrible, but it's a different kind of challenge, I guess. One guy has a turret on the back of the car, one has a bat he swings, and one drives. If you kill the driver, the guy with the bat takes over. If you kill all of them, you can take the car yourself, and the turret guy stays on there as you drive. Right in the middle of the screen. This game isn't exactly subtle. The worst part comes next. This is the only boss that doesn't stay dead. They respawn if you leave and come back. I don't know the specifics of it if they spawn at a certain time of day, but it's annoying beyond belief. If you're escorting survivors through the park, guess what? They might be right there in their car outside of the food court. If you don't have a decent weapon, you're screwed. You have no chance at all. I'll get more into this topic in the last section, but I at least can understand average zombies respawning. This sort of thing kind of needs to happen to fulfill the game's goal of always having zombies around. The convicts respawning makes no sense, and nothing in the game even acknowledges that it's out of place. Maybe this was their solution to make the outdoor connecting area a tough gamble to go through, but I don't think it was a worthwhile trade-off. Not only that, but being able to defeat them once, depending on your loadout and level, could prove to be one of the toughest fights in the game. It's also entirely possible the only reason someone would have for even attempting to take them out is to get rid of them. They're a hassle to deal with, and they offer barely anything in return. Imagine the player's surprise when they find out the convicts respawn anyway, and their efforts were wasted. That's exactly what happened to me. Thankfully, the clown fight gives you a way to circumvent this issue. Speaking of the clown, he is the next boss you're likely to encounter. Adam's probably my favorite fight, if only because you won't have the chainsaws to fight him. His attacks are all extremely damaging, especially the spinning lariat he has. He for some reason blocks your gunfire with his chainsaw, which is honestly pretty dumb, but I get why it has to be done. He does an attack with a balloon that is one of his vulnerable states. It blows up when it hits you or if you shoot it. Besides getting lucky with his pathfinding or his attacks, my best strategy was throwing cash registers at him. Works like a charm. Afterwards, he has an extremely gruesome cutscene where he falls onto his chainsaws. This game was aimed at edgy teenagers even though it was rated mature, and at times goes too far in my opinion. This cutscene is fine, I guess. I think it was pretty useless and stupid, but whatever. His introduction cutscene is also really odd, and if anything pointed out something that the game probably didn't want you to think about. I'm sure most of you are aware, but just in case some aren't, when your game is rated mature, that doesn't mean you can just put anything into your game. One of the big no-nos is showing or depicting kids being murdered. Some games include kids, but when you're around them, your weapons don't work or they're invincible. In this game, there aren't any kids at all in the entire mall, even though that doesn't make any sense. You'd expect at least a few families to have their kids with them, and there are plenty of toy stores in the mall as well. The clown's bio implies he entertains children, so already they kind of make you think about the lack of kids. In the opening cutscene, it shows him talking about murder when the coaster rides up, with bloody teddy bears in it. I'm assuming this was a stand-in for children. If that's the case, this clown is the most fucked up of the entire bunch. If not, this clown is just silly. Your reward for beating him is twofold. Not only do you get his awesome chainsaw, but you save one of the maintenance crew guys who was trapped on the ride. He shows you a shortcut from the women's bathroom in Wonderland Plaza that connects to the women's bathroom in Paradise Plaza. This shortcut is essential as far as I'm concerned. It's a great way to avoid Leisure Park and the convicts. What I don't like is that on repeat playthroughs, even though I know about this trick, you can't access it until this guy shows you. All of Frank's skills and upgrades carry over, so I don't know why this knowledge can't as well, especially since all the guy does is move a tile over and you climb through. It isn't like he had a key or anything. Next up we have Cletus, the gun store owner. This is a horrible fight. He has a shotgun which stuns you and deals a crazy amount of damage, and if you jump over the counter, he throws you back. Standing behind the racks is apparently the proper strategy to block the bullets, but I never got it to work with just one stand. I had to move one of them to create a small blockade for it to work. Best bet is to run up to the counter, don't jump over, and whack him with the chainsaws. Playing without the chainsaws though, I found that throwing a bunch of junk into his area so he can't throw you back over worked kinda well. I was able to grab a gun from the other side and use that on him. If his shotgun wasn't so damaging or there would be more time to heal, I would like this fight a lot more. If it was intended for you to jump over the counter to grab a gun to use back at him, that's pretty cool honestly. In his intro cutscene, he shot some dude who made the correct claim that they need guns to fight zombies, and afterwards he complains that I'm willing to kill other people for guns. Whatever, man. Cliff in the garden center is up next. He's not too bad. He strung up a bunch of mutilated bodies. He even has a few hostages out in a different room. He's a Vietnam vet, and of course he went crazy. The mini chainsaws didn't offer a huge advantage, as he always ran away after a single hit. There are some buzzsaw blades in the room you can throw at him, or you can try your luck with the big chainsaw. Good thing I always have a katana on me. I like that he rigged the arena so he can pop in and out of the floor to surprise you. Guerrilla warfare makes sense for a Vietnam vet. He throws grenades when he's on top of the shelves, or smacks you with his machete. Afterwards, he has a dumb cutscene where he comes to his senses, tries to get sympathy from you, and I laugh in his face. Yeah right, Capcom, I don't give a shit about this guy or his family. Maybe don't string up and torture people, you sick fuck. The weapon he drops is a unique machete. It's almost as good as the mini chainsaw. It's good. Joe, the corrupt cop, is quite something. I'll have more to say later on about her intro cutscene, but for now, I'll just ignore it. First time through with the chainsaws, she goes down immediately. When I tried it without the chainsaws, it still wasn't very good. She has a taser and a handgun. It seems every boss has some kind of ranged weapon in case you climb up something and are out of reach, which is a smart consideration. The gimmick of this fight, I think, is if you take too long, she'll keep attacking the hostages until they die. That would be very interesting, however, even when I tried to play terribly so it could happen, she never even got half the health down on any of the survivors. If you don't have much when you enter the fight, there's some potted plants, a cash register, and handbags you can use. I ended up killing her with a handbag. There's the Hall family, which camp out on the top level of the entrance plaza, taking sniper shots at regular humans. Their cutscene leans into the American pro-guns thing. This fight seems to be awkward no matter what. Guns are so weak, and when you aim them, you just get hit by their sniper shots. With the chainsaws, I had to chase them down and smack them, but even with a non-chainsaw melee weapon like a katana, they still run away the whole fight, which makes them hard to hit. I don't love it. It's also basically a copy and paste of the second Carlito fight from the story. It's in the same area, and they use the same weapon. I wonder why they did this. What's even worse is that one of the sons clearly doesn't want to shoot you, but if you leave him alive, he still tries to kill you. I feel like it would have made sense for you to be able to save him, especially for how the Paul Carson boss fight works later on. Kent, the photographer, is a boss fight if you do his camera scoops correctly. I think this might be the best psychopath in the entire game, only because he gets more screen time than the others, meaning his character is a bit more fleshed out. You know his deal, he goes overboard with photography and is clearly a little nutty to be worrying about being a pro with the camera when zombies are roaming all around. At least Frank is trying to uncover a story. First time you see him, he calls Frank out for being an amateur, he shows you how to take pictures for a bigger score. After you take a picture of Kent with a good pose, he admits you're not too bad. He challenges you to take an erotic picture higher than 750 points. I'll talk more about this at the end of the video if you catch my drift. Once you meet him again with a good picture, he leaves and wants to meet up once more on the next day. Kent has tied up a survivor and is planning to infect him with a parasite to capture on film the moment he becomes a zombie. Frank stops it and a boss fight takes place. Kent's flying kick is ridiculously deadly, so I could easily see a lot of people dying to him stun-locking you with the kick over and over. Hit him with a few chairs, maybe a kick of your own, and you're good. Afterwards, his cutscene is actually very fitting. Unlike most of the others that are just random, awkward, or crazy just for the sake of it, his death scene makes sense, since you understand his character and relationship with Frank, and it doesn't go overboard. There's a psychopath in the story section whose death cutscene is the polar opposite. Paul Carson is an interesting fellow. He is the only psychopath you can rescue afterwards. In the fight, he runs around throwing batches of explosives at you, as well as Molotov cocktails. It's kind of funny seeing him run around clearing out hordes of zombies all by himself. Unfortunately, even though it would have made perfect sense, he can't kill himself. He's able to get hurt by his own attacks, but it will only drop him to 1 health, and you need to get the last hit in. Overall, a really easy fight. Afterwards, he sets himself on fire with his own Molotov cocktail, and you have a chance to save him with the fire extinguisher that's in the room. I tried the water gun as well, but that doesn't work, unfortunately. He then acts as a normal survivor that you escort to the security room. Lastly, we have the cult leader, Sean. He's one of my other favorites, but not because his fight is good. After you first see him in Paradise Plaza, from then until his fight, he alters them all in a really interesting way. His raincoat cultists appear in small groups all over the mall. I like these enemies. They offer a fun distraction from the usual zombies. They can suicide bomb, charge you with a knife, and blow powder at your face to capture you. If you get captured, you end up naked in a secret area where you need to fight all the goons here with no items to get out. Back to Sean himself, I don't think his fight is anything interesting. He just runs at you and slashes you with a sword. Not really much to say here. I will have more to say about him in regards to his quest line, but right now I'll just say I think this sword here, this one, is really dumb. The way it kills Sean in the cutscene is just stupid and gory for no purpose. Dead Rising has this kind of thing happen frequently, where there's no point to the gruesome shit, it's just done for the sake of it. Like, how does it fall over into his face? I'm assuming it was a jab at their cult, that this is his god responding to his call by murdering him. It just felt too cheesy for me. The weapon you get from him is a ceremonial sword. It's pretty good. I still wish I could have gotten it earlier, but I'll talk about that later. Those are all the optional bosses. I'll get to the ones required for the story when discussing the story. The survivors in Dead Rising are one of the best open-world collectibles I've ever seen in gaming. Seeing that name and health bar sparked excitement in me, as not only would I be able to get experience and hopefully level up, I had to hurry it up since they could be in danger. Some are just hanging out in certain parts of the mall, while some are being held hostage, some need a scoop to activate before you can find them, and others just show up while you walk around. The first 2 you find are a really good training exercise for the player in 2 different ways. 1, you get to safely find survivors, have them tag along with you, and realize they can react to certain things like seeing their spouse. What's even crazier is if you kill the wife, then bring the husband over, he defects and won't work with you anymore. It feels like all of them have varying degrees of personality. The other great lesson here is learning how dumb survivors are. Literally, how did they even get up here? The elevator? Why are they on opposite sides of the wall? Why don't they move? They don't make any attempt to find each other, even when I bring the wife to a spot in eyesight of her husband. Nothing. You might also accidentally figure out the requirements for when survivors come with you through a loading screen or not. They need to be right next to you, otherwise they're deaf, blind, and dumb. In this case, they need to be on that elevated block you're on to come with you through the loading screen back into the safe room. If they're on the lower surface, they don't follow you, even though they can obviously see you. They just stay in the other area and wait for you. It's so stupid. This is a problem with every load screen transition from plaza to plaza. They need to be right next to you, otherwise they're stuck in the previous area. Maybe this doesn't need to be explicitly said, but I'm going to just in case someone out there needs to hear this. It doesn't make any sense that people who are trying to survive a zombie apocalypse wouldn't keep walking in the direction of the person that is trying to save them. Even when they are walking your way, there are no zombies in their path. If they're 5 feet too far from you than the game allows, they get lost and could die since they couldn't figure out how to keep walking and open a door. Their pathfinding is some of the worst I've ever seen in a video game. I would go as far to say that Dead Rising shouldn't have been shipped with these issues present. The survivors are such a critical feature to the game, it just not working like it should half the time means a staggeringly large amount of your playtime might be waiting for your survivors to leave or enter a bathroom. They just seem to run in straight lines, walk into obstacles, other people, or walk right into the zombies themselves. Sometimes they stop and cry, sometimes they attack zombies for no reason, sometimes they run into zombies even though they have a weapon in their hands. Sometimes they can't walk over a small ledge. This particular thing happened with Cheryl. I had 5 survivors with me at once, which is an experience I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. It's a nightmare trying to get these 5 idiots to walk in a straight line, so I went into the pond to avoid the zombies. Everyone was fine but her. She just could not get up this ledge. I had to go back, bring all of the survivors with me, get her up the ledge, and walk a different pathway. You gotta love it. Even with only 2 or 3 survivors, when in the bathrooms, it can just turn into chaos. Just walk out of the bathroom, please, please. You can direct them to go to a location, but when there's a lot of them, they all just fight for that one specific spot. What are they doing? There are surprisingly even more issues that make escorting a pain, but I won't get into all of them here as it fits better in the final section. With the survivors, some of them you can hold their hand to make them go faster, some can lean on you since they're injured, and some are so hurt you need to carry them around. Paradoxically, the ones that are the most injured are easiest to transport. If I could carry any survivor, I would carry all of them. When you have them on your back or over your shoulder, zombies can't grab you basically at all. Usually they're like a magnet to you, grabbing you at a moment's notice. With a survivor on your back, it's like they're magnetized away from you. They just can't touch you. However, those injured survivors are the ones that break my immersion more than any other. Once you get to the roof, you can't help them up the ledge, so no matter how hurt they are, they jump up themselves. Very awkwardly. They also somehow can get into the vent themselves, and craziest of all, they can somehow get in the secret shortcut in the bathrooms just fine. Sure. In addition to a few of them being hurt, some of them require something from the player. One of them can only be saved after a story segment is complete. One of them can only be saved if you beat him up a little bit. One of them can only be saved if you walk away from him and go back. One needs food, otherwise he won't budge. One you need to find a different survivor for her to work with you. There's 2 survivors that require you to have a Japanese language magazine equipped so you can talk to them. You can also give survivors weapons. Generally, they're horrible with them and might end up shooting you instead. However, one particular couple has a different result. If the thought of suicide is a trigger for you, or you are sensitive to the topic, I would advise skipping to the next section. If you give the guy a handgun like he asks for, he shoots himself, and the girl can't be rescued anymore. I don't think they handled this segment well, as it's almost framed like a secret collectible. Taking a picture of him when he does it will basically be your best picture and give you a ton of experience. I understand journalism can be scummy and preys on this sort of personal drama with no regard for sympathy, but the game never tries to say anything about it. Yes, Frank is a photojournalist. He's kind of a dick. He takes photos, he acknowledges his job is to pry into other people's lives. But none of that is important to the story or saying anything about the industry itself or how society is drawn to and craves this garbage gossip. I just don't understand the purpose of this other than shock value. He wasn't even that injured, as you can refuse to give him a gun and bring him back to the safe room just fine. Meaning it's not even representing the horrors of their current situation well by ham-fisting a suicidal person. It's not a tasteful take on how serious of an issue suicide is. 2006 was a different time, I understand that, but I feel this needed to be acknowledged. So the story has a bunch of issues in its execution, progression, and the quality overall. This is definitely the longest section of the video, so brace yourselves for 20 minutes of story. It begins with Frank West, a freelance journalist, taking a helicopter to Willamette, Colorado, which is a fictional town with around 53,000 citizens. On the trip in the helicopter, you can see a few interesting places to take pictures. I think it's very interesting that the camera is the first bit of gameplay introduced. On the way, we can see the army has blocked off the entry and exits to the city, so something is obviously happening here. When you get into the mall, you arrive first in the entrance plaza where a bunch of people are barricading the front doors. An elderly woman lost her dog and is searching everywhere for it. Next, of course, we get an ass-first shot of Isabella, because women, am I right? This sort of thing will come up a lot, and I'll discuss it all at the end, but for now, just mark a tally for how often this shit happens. Frank is told to find stuff to barricade the door with, and finds a random old guy who yells at him. Frank has no idea how to handle confrontation and yells at him back. Frank sucks. The elderly lady sees her dog is trapped with the zombies, and she opens the door and all hell breaks loose. Kind of embarrassing, all the maintenance guy had to do was close the door and they would have all been fine. Somehow in this time, the plaza is flooded with zombies. You're supposed to run as fast as you can back to the stairs, but if you wait here and try to help people, the game shows its invisible walls pretty quickly. This was my second playthrough, so I had the lariat move. Watch as I clear out this entire area, but this girl won't move at all. She just stands there. Doesn't really make any sense. Afterwards, we make it back to the security room, and they seal the door shut. Brad claims the air ducts can't be used by the zombies. Remember that line for later on. We meet Jessie, and of course this game is an edgelord and needs to show a slow pan upwards starting at her ass. Women, am I right? Moments later, when we try to begin exploring the mall, Jessie sneaks up behind us. Frank says a terrible line.
Zombies, huh? Had a feeling you'd show up.
And Jessie sprains her ankle. So she's supposed to be backup for Brad in heels? What the fuck, man? Women, am I right? You have to go help Brad in her stead. This is where the structure of the story shows up. It's kind of like Majora's Mask, if you've played that, where there are events that occur on a fixed schedule. However, if you miss a case in Dead Rising, the rest of the story goes out the window. It's really weird and doesn't make much sense. I'll get to some examples later on. Case 1-2 is you going to the food court to help Brad fight off Carlito. If you haven't figured out that you can climb stuff yet, this will be a good introduction, as you basically need to climb the crates to get close to him. The strategy for Carlito really comes before the fight begins. It's a quick lesson for the player about going into a new zone or a story mission with a good selection of equipment. If you grabbed an extra handgun from one of the cops in the Paradise Plaza, the fight goes much smoother. Maybe grab an orange juice from there as well, otherwise the wine in this area will work for healing. It's in these cutscenes we see an example of how cool the costumes work. They stay on in the cutscenes and no one even acknowledges them. It's pretty great.
Who is that? Where did you take it?
You help me, I help you.
Case 1-3 is following Brad to where that old dude who yelled at you is. Doing this case, in my opinion, is very important, if only because it opens up the entrance plaza. If you don't do this with Brad, he won't unlock the gate. Very odd. We find the old man, last name Barnaby. He smartly says he doesn't want to leave unless we can guarantee him safe passage through the mall. Case 1-4's cutscene of course opens with a shot of Jessie's legs and cleavage, because women, am I right? Apparently HQ can't be contacted as there's no signal. It's here Frank announces his method of escape, the helicopter coming back in 3 days. Frank trades a spot on his ride for more information, which Brad agrees to but doesn't actually tell Frank anything. This is where the game's enormous flaw with its story structure shows up. The next case doesn't happen until 6 a.m., meaning you have time to do whatever you want until this case starts. Right now it isn't too bad, since you have stuff to do, and the game is fairly new, but later on it gets awful. Even still, the next case is only activated by being in the safe room at a certain time. I think right here it's especially dumb to do this, as the Japanese tourist scoop and the clown psychopath scoop both end at the same time, so if you took too long doing those, you just miss out on the story. If you decide that story is more important, you will likely just be standing in here for the entire time doing nothing. What's even worse, you being in the safe room at this time activating the next bit of story doesn't make any sense. Jesse spots Carlito dragging Barnaby. Brad goes after him. They could have easily called you and told you what was going on. Instead, Brad, Carlito, Barnaby, and Isabella, whom we haven't even heard from yet, will vanish if you miss this case. They're gone forever. When you talk to Jessie with the case missed, she says everything is normal. She obviously would have been concerned about where Brad is, but instead she never mentions it. It's just so strange. I'm kind of going on a tangent about this case, but this is the last random thing I will say about it. If you don't want to do the entire story, but still want to explore them all, I would recommend doing this case, as it's the only way to open the other gate into the entrance plaza. The one Brad opened earlier allowed you to access it from Alfresca Plaza, but after accepting this case, it's open from both the Alfresca and the Paradise Plaza. Having this open makes certain survivor escorts so much easier. In the case itself, 2-1 is just a cutscene where you spot Barnaby hanging from a rope in the entrance plaza. You and Brad go there to rescue him. Case 2-2 is the second fight with Carlito. This one is pretty fun. He has a sniper rifle and you're supposed to flank him. It's kind of annoying how every boss's attack could send you flying. Watch how the sniper shot sends me over the rail. Yeah, what a great feeling. Now I gotta go all the way back up. If you leave Brad to fight him alone, he will die, so don't do that. Instead, chase him down and smack him up. Brad gets shot in the aftermath, and you, him, and Barnaby end up in the safe room. I would have loved to see Frank pushing Barnaby's unconscious body through the air ducts. Case 2-3 begins. You need to get medicine from the pharmacy through the grocery store. There's a boss fight in here, and it's really dumb. I realize Dead Rising is trying to be cheesy and over the top, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. He's just a grocery store manager that went crazy over supposed vandalism, putting property over human lives. I won't touch that one in this video. He has Isabella in his cart of knives and other sharp things. He also has a shotgun, which he uses if you climb up on the shelves. With the chainsaws, it's a whap whap and he's done, but even without them, it's not the best fight. He can stun lock you with his cart repeatedly, which isn't very fun. I do think it's interesting that the arena you're battling in is consistent with the rules the game has set out for you. Eating and drinking is how you heal, so you always have healing items around for you to use. A lesser game may have done some contrivance to remove the food as an option, but Dead Rising is better than that. His death cutscene is also really bad. They're leaning into being creepy, but also funny? I don't think it's either, just awkward.
My food, my sales, my customers. Have a nice day. Clean up! Register 6!
The weapon he drops is his ouchie sharp cart. It's pretty fun to use, but you can only use it in the store. I really like throwing it. It's basically a ball of death that plows over everything. Anyway, afterwards Isabella wakes up, accuses Frank of causing the zombie outbreak. Okay, I guess. You bring the medicine back to the safe room and wait for the next case at 11 a.m. Case 3-1, Jesse for some reason just now notices blood on Frank's shirt. Barnaby is awake, we talk to him. Santa Cabeza, which is what Isabella mentioned, is brought up, which angers and scares Barnaby. We're just about to get some information, but Frank is a dumbass and interrupts with his camera. Frank sucks. The next case is in 4 hours, which means you can wait around in the safe room or go explore a bit. Finally, in 4 hours, you see on the monitor that Isabella went back to the grocery store on her motorcycle. When you get there, she hops back on her motorcycle and a boss fight begins. This is one of them where having the chainsaws doesn't guarantee an easy victory. On my playthrough without the chainsaws, I had a really rough time with this one. Her motorcycle doesn't move in any way that makes sense or is consistent with how you move while driving it later on. When you drive it, if you run into something, you fall off. She just runs into walls, doesn't lose her speed, turns on a dime, and keeps on rolling. She even spins around like the wheels are gliding on butter. A very irritating fight. Once you defeat her, she kicks Frank in the dick, then Frank mounts her. Because of course he does. Frank's camera manages to stay glued to his chest, even though being on top of her would cause gravity to beam her in the face with it. I think I would have preferred seeing that. That sounds pretty funny. She reveals that she's Carlito's sister. She will get Frank to talk to Carlito later on, after Carlito's recovered. She says this was all a message from Carlito, which is just the stupidest thing. A message has no meaning if nobody knows it's a message in the first place. No one knows what's going on. Maybe the government will get it? I don't know. You need to meet them at midnight, so of course this means you need to wait. This time the location is in an empty store in the North Plaza. Case 5-1, you meet Isabella at the abandoned store. She's late. She barges in as a single zombie is taking her down. One zombie. She had given Frank a run for his money in the boss fight earlier, so I guess her injured arm just ruined her survival skills. Apparently Carlito shot her in the arm? She said it wasn't his fault, he was just angry. Yikes, this whole cutscene is a mess. I also don't understand why I need to carry her if it's only her arm that was injured. Case 5-2 is you carrying her back to the security room. I have a hunch Kindle, a random survivor, was only put here at this time so you could randomly run into him and have him help you out on the return trip. He's the only survivor that has a shotgun and fends fairly well for himself. You make it back to the security room with her on your back. Again, would have loved to see how Frank got her through the air ducts. Everyone now knows Carlito is the reason the zombies are a thing in the mall. Case 6-1 begins once you wait long enough in the safe room for Isabella to wake up. Brad interrogates Isabella. She reveals that the zombie thing was all the Americans' fault. There was no drug trade in the town of Santa Cabeza. It was an American-run research facility doing experiments on wasps that can turn living things into zombies. Dr. Barnaby was apparently the head of that research facility. Next thing you know, Barnaby tackles Jesse out of the back room. Frank kicks him off, but Barnaby isn't dead. No. Even though he was just turning into a zombie, he is coherent and says he's a zombie. My goodness, you can't make this up. Even though he's a zombie, apparently, he can still talk just fine. He admits they were doing tests on zombies and were trying to mass-produce cattle. The reasoning is, Americans eat a lot of meat. He says he didn't do anything wrong. It's annoying to me how he claims it was absolutely necessary, and he didn't do anything wrong, but he doesn't outline the problems of why this research was necessary. Why would the government be invested in producing cheaper cattle? I don't really get it. I would understand if it was a private company trying to make a profit, not the US government. Anyway, Barnaby gets shot as a zombie, Brad accepts help from Isabella, and that's that. Next case is in 8 hours from now. Take it or leave it. 7-1 is a cutscene where we find out that Carlito is going to blow up the mall because this is his last resort. The explosion will apparently spread the zombie-infecting parasites everywhere. Carlito is filling the underground tunnels, where the bombs are, with flammable gas. How he got access to that much flammable gas, I have no idea. We're supposed to disarm the bombs while the gas concentration is still low. If you ignore this quest, the mall will blow up just like the game said it would, and it's game over. The zombie parasite spreads everywhere. I like that the threat made from Carlito is very real and has consequences. Once you do it the right way, though, 7-2, we go to the tunnels to do the job. We learn that Carlito slashed the tires of every truck in the tunnels, so we'll have to go on foot. This is very interesting, as if you messed up the story way earlier on, when Carlito, Isabella, and Brad are nowhere to be found, the tires are still slashed. Maybe Carlito slashed them when he first got into the mall, I don't know. It's so strange to think about what happened to these characters when Frank isn't in the safe room at the right time for the mission to continue. Does Brad just die somewhere? Where did Carlito go? Did Isabella die from the grocery store manager? The manager is nowhere to be seen if you don't do the story either. All super weird. Anyway, we go to the maintenance tunnels. Even if you're smart and grab the red car in the lot, there are now barricades to block your entry. Now we really need to be on foot. Again, imagine this if you were a low level with a slow walking speed. I imagine this mission might be a lot more difficult if you haven't leveled up a bunch. However, if you're resourceful, you might figure out making an untouchable and a quick-step juice combo would be beneficial to this mission. Look at me go! Regardless, the double lariat is your best friend down here. You seek out the trucks to collect all of the bombs. Carlito finds you and it's your last fight with him. He drives around and tries to run you down. If you get enough damage on him, he seems to drive off and come back a few seconds later when your back is turned. Once you get him down to 0 health, he crashes, and Brad shows up to go after Carlito. I gotta say, the music that plays anytime you fight Carlito is fantastic. Grab all the bombs. Frank walks out with all 5 bombs in his hands, so their plan for disarming the bombs was to actually collect them and let them explode outside. Either way, the plan worked. This is quite the action-packed case as we go to a Brad and Carlito gunfight. I have to say, Brad's character is pretty great, if only for this one scene. When I saw the zombie come up from behind him, I thought that would be how they kill him off. But he does this. This subverted my expectations in a really great way. He then charges Carlito in a really dumb way, shoots him, and somehow manages to get bested by a downed Carlito who grabbed a knife out. He kicks Brad through the door, Carlito closes it, and Brad is surrounded by zombies. Oh shoot, man, the same zombies I had to walk through to grab the bombs. It's a pretty cool shot though, even if the tunnels were never that dark. Anyway, bombs explode. Hooray, you did it. Of course you gotta go back and see what happened to Brad, right? When you find him, something pretty revolting happens. Warning. You see, he's not only been bitten, but his intestines were pulled out of his body. Disgusting. You can either kill him or leave him be. I cleave his body in half with a sword. A fitting end to a glorious man. After this, we have the most ridiculous moment in the game, in my opinion. If you were too quick or something, I don't know, I didn't feel like I was going that fast. If you get to the safe room too early, nothing happens. So I wait here until it's the proper time, I guess. Watch what happens.
As soon as Brad gets his hands on that terrorist, I guess it'll be case closed, huh?
You know of anything else he could be planning?
Yes, he runs in, and they greet him as if he had just accomplished the goal. Really strange. That was case 8-1. Basically, Isabella just now realizes Carlito had a secret hideout that had a computer with info on it. Great. Case 8-2 is you escorting, or I should say, Isabella making you follow her to the hideout. Oh my, this was very annoying. She immediately makes the process worse by taking the elevator, when I had been using the back door this whole time since you can drop down instead, avoiding the elevator full of zombies. This mission is a constant loop of you clearing the way you think she'll take of zombies, her choosing to not go that way, then you stand there while she shoots at zombies she could easily run past. Remember earlier when one zombie took her down? I tell ya. When you get there, this game just can't stop with this stuff. Isabella chooses to kneel down on all fours to use the laptop, instead of sitting or placing it on the flat surface like the cooler, crates, or shelf behind her. All so you can see an up-close shot of Isabella. This game, man. Anyway, she can't gain access to the laptop without the password. There's a jamming device hooked up to the laptop that is preventing Jesse from contacting HQ. Then something absolutely ridiculous happens. I swear, this stuff happens all the time. I'm not gonna lie, this is the kind of thing that irritates me quite a bit. I generally let it go when the character I'm playing as can't speak what I want them to say, since usually it's not a big deal or they're a silent protagonist. Frank can talk, okay? Jesse calls him, tells him to come back since she saw something he should look at. He just says, "Alright, I'm on my way." Why even have the transmitter if you don't use it to pass on information? Shouldn't they be trying to minimize the time needed to spend in the mall with zombies? Case 8-3, you go back to the safe room, see that Carlito was dragged into one of the maintenance tunnel rooms by some goober. Yeah, Jesse even knows exactly where to go, basement of the North Plaza by the butcher shop. Why couldn't this have been told to me when I was still in the North Plaza? I could have walked there so easily, all she had to do was say, "I found Carlito, he was dragged by some goober into the basement of North Plaza, under the butcher shop." And done. Literally, like, this just doesn't make any sense. It just felt like padding. Case 8-4, so we get to the butcher shop and find a very large butcher who has mistaken Carlito for meat. I would be more okay with this kind of thing if the butcher was anywhere to be seen at any other time, or maybe even if his corpse shows up somewhere if you don't do the story. Where was he hiding this whole time? So he offers ground Carlito to Frank, since he thinks Frank is a customer, but Carlito is meat. He also has an enormous selection of meat already in the room, so I really don't know why he needs Carlito at all. I don't get any of it, and I don't think I'm supposed to. Whatever, his fight is kind of funny. He throws the big chunks of meat at you, which do a crazy amount of damage. He can zigzag between the meat, as well as put you onto one of his hooks and start slashing at you with his cleaver. For some reason, the shelves in this room do an insane amount of damage to him. It's almost not fair. I wonder if one of my magazines at the time was influencing it, as it was just ludicrous. His meat throw can also miss you and hit Carlito instead, which kills him. You still finish the boss fight, but the story is gone, you can't uncover the truth. So anyway, we save Carlito. Apparently he's nearly dead somehow. He explains the Santa Cabeza backstory once more. Producing more meat for America was apparently so important they did the zombie thing in his town. He blames Frank and friends for eating too much meat, again, and Frank yells at him. It's almost like there was an anti-meat message in this game, which I'm totally fine with, but they butchered it. No pun intended. Well, of course it's intended now. I wrote it and chose to keep it in. Anyway, Carlito tries to compare Americans and zombies by saying all they do is eat and eat and eat. But there's not enough substance here. I think the reasoning for the outbreak being the attempt to mass-produce cattle is actually clever and more thought out than most zombie outbreak stories. I'm okay with it being different, it just seems like they weren't sure if they wanted to bring light to real issues in the world, like over-reliance on meat in America, while giving it a serious tone. It's hard to take this seriously when I can also place horse heads on zombies. I think the story would have been better suited if they didn't try to make it so serious and went full wacky with it. However, I don't think I'm giving enough credit to how much power simply presenting a problem to a wide audience can have. Like I said, the over-reliance on meat is a serious issue. The entire meat industry is inhumane and unsustainable. If the game went a little further, like maybe 1 or 2 more cutscenes explaining the issues in a way that demonstrates how it impacts everyday people, or maybe even relate how senselessly Frank kills zombies with how we kill cows and chickens. There's just not enough here to really pique anyone's interest on the subject matter. It's too simplified, yet it's attributed as the root cause of the zombie outbreak at the same time. It's not trying to be subtle about its message, but the message itself doesn't have any nuance to it. It doesn't work. Anyway, Carlito gives his pendant to Frank to give to Isabella. The facts, last case of the game. Again, the same thing happens. I'm too early, I have to wait around doing nothing until the cutscene triggers. This time it's arguably worse, since I have news about her brother and a pendant to give her. Instead, she tells Frank she hasn't had any luck with the computer, and Frank doesn't say anything and waits 7 out-of-game minutes. Yes, I stood here, all tabbed, for 7 minutes until this cutscene triggered. Now Isabella is surprised to see me, whoa! And now Frank tells her he's dead. How on earth could they think this would be okay? Did they test this game? They really couldn't have triggered this cutscene when Frank walks in. He gives her the pendant, she figures out the password, and that's that. After this, Jessie calls you. She says she can now contact Emergency HQ. The game doesn't show us that cutscene for some reason, but 1 minute later you get a call from Jessie again, and now she tells you what happened on the call. HQ chose to ignore them, meaning they're going to send in special forces at midnight to kill everything, zombies and people alike. After this, she huddles up in the now empty safe room. Wait, why would this safe room be empty? Otis at the very least has to be alive, in addition to any survivors you saved. You get a letter from Otis later on saying he left with the survivors, but on a helicopter, meaning the special forces had to have arrived at that point. He mentioned he couldn't find Jessie, which is just ridiculous as he has to walk past the room Jessie is in to get to the roof. Whatever, game, have your dumb cutscene. Literally moments later we see another cutscene. A special forces guy talks to Jessie, saying she can live if she signs an agreement. Somehow, her tiny brush with Barnaby caused her to get infected, and she takes down this guard all by herself. Okay, sure. Well, I arrive moments later and both Special Force guys are dead, and Jessie is still a zombie. These Special Force guys suck. This is where you find the note from Otis. He says, heard a hell of a racket coming from the monitors, but he's been standing 10 feet from that room the whole game. He also somehow managed to slap this note in the room Jesse was in the entire time. I don't get it. So next up is to survive until the helicopter comes. At midnight, the Special Force guys come out with machine guns and shoot zombies and you if they find you. With the mini chainsaw, they're a breeze though. If you go back to Carlito's hideout, Isabella is still there and you get another cutscene, which tells us nothing. And that's it. Thankfully, I looked it up online, and to continue seeing the story, you need to be in Carlito's hideout at 10 a.m. Well, guess what, gang? I stood here for 7 in-game hours, which took me 30 real minutes. I recorded it all for you. 30 minutes of me alt-tabbed, 30 minutes of footage, 30 minutes of video taking up space on my hard drive, to see a watch tick away 7 in-game hours. I do this for you. Being in the hideout at this time shows us a cutscene of all the Special Force guys leaving. I guess they couldn't locate him, so they just left. I'm assuming that's why the cutscene triggers only if you're in the hideout. I won't lie, walking through the mall with all the zombies dead is kind of cool. It's eerie. The mall normally never looks like this for a reason I'll get to in the next section. Then I make it to the helipad and am forced to wait until noon. Oh man, so much waiting. Maybe this was to give time so you could explore the mall with no zombies? I don't know. Unfortunately, I'm not done with being annoyed with the story. If you don't do the story, here's what happens with Ed and your escape.
You telling me you managed to rescue all these folks?
Yeah, I guess so.
Jeez, did you come here to save people or get your story?
Everything goes fine, but Ed makes a snarky remark to you about not prioritizing the news over human lives. Okay, buddy. Here's what happens when you do complete the story. Ed sees that Frank is on time, Ed comes over, and a zombie is in his helicopter, kills him, and he crashes. Do I need to explain why this is stupid? Hang on. Pause it here. I'll be annoyed with that next part in a minute. Hang on. Go back. Why would Frank's actions at the mall affect if Ed dies or not? The only communication Ed has with Frank and the mall is literally day 1 and day 4. That's it. That's all. Frank doing nothing for 3 days or uncovering everything in 3 days should have no bearing on whether a zombie will be in the helicopter to kill Ed. It makes absolutely no sense at all. Okay, let's keep it going this time. You saw it, I saw it. The entire mall was cleared of zombies. Not only that, the security room and helipad never in the entire game had zombies. Brad said in the beginning that zombies can't use the air ducts. How are they up here now? For dramatic effect? Piss off. It's just ridiculous. Okay, thankfully the game is done. Okay, so now it's time to talk about the technical difficulties. So there's a bunch here. Let's get started. Oh, wait. Hang on. There's more to the game after the credits roll. Like a lot more. Okay, fantastic. Overtime mode. The cutscene continues. Frank is about to be grabbed by a zombie. Isabella saves the day. There are so many zombies up here for some reason, and Isabella never once came to the helipad before. I don't know why she wouldn't have tried to escape with Frank in the first place. I don't get it. Frank collapses on the helipad. Isabella addresses this next part, but it's still dumb as shit. She drags him all the way back to the hideout. Yes, the hideout that is through the air duct, down the elevator, from Paradise Plaza, into Leisure Park, into North Plaza, up the boxes, and into the ceiling. Okay. Yeah. Turns out Frank is infected. Whoa, what? No way. It's all gloom and doom until Isabella has an epiphany about halting the zombification process. She needs a bunch of supplies from the mall for her plan to work. I actually really like the gameplay part of this next section. Traveling around the mall, picking up items on a shopping list, fighting through zombies and special forces. Hang on. Zombies and special forces? Yeah, even though the special forces killed all the zombies, and the special forces were shown in a cutscene to have left the mall, they're all back. I don't get it. The zombies are isolated in the park for whatever reason. It's really weird and it's never explained. After you grab some items for Isabella around the mall, another big revelation is unearthed. Before that though, okay, so Isabella is cool with constructing her parasite blender machine on the boxes, but not placing her laptop on them. Okay, whatever. Carlito in the past looked into a way to suppress the parasite and implanted it into a bunch of foster kids that were sent all over the country. So now they have another huge reason to want to escape, so they can warn everyone about the zombie time bombs. Now our goal is to collect 10 queen wasps. I'm not going to talk about it since this is already so long, but just know this fetch quest is awful and I hate it. First you need to grab a generator, and in doing so, Frank sees a bunch of zombies that are coming out of the clock tower that broke open when Ed crashed into it. Haha, see, I tricked you earlier. I knew why the zombies were only in the park area. They're all coming from down here. Bring back the generator, bring back 10 queen wasps, good to go. She makes the drug, injects Frank with it. However, it won't cure him forever, maybe a year at best, but for now, that's done with. Isabella reveals she has been working on creating a pheromone that suppresses the attack instinct of zombies. She says they think it smells bad. How the fuck did she find time to make this and do the testing necessary to figure out if it actually works? She even says there isn't enough time to test it. Anyway, they use the pheromone to go through the zombies in the tunnel under the clock tower. I have no earthly idea why there are so many zombies down here. It just doesn't make any sense. You could argue there shouldn't even have been as many people in the mall as there are zombies in it, but this is just taking it to the extreme. Where the hell are they all coming from? Seriously. So you walk through the tunnel, do a really contrived tactic to sick the zombies on the guards blocking your path, which doesn't even work, and I have to kill them myself. You then hop in a truck with a turret on it, a tank comes out and tries to get you, you shoot it until it just stops. The military guy switches to manual control, he knocks their car over, aims the cannon at Frank, and they talk a bit. Basically, he explains he was the one who had to go clean up the Santa Cabeza incident, and now he's here to clean up this one. And after he gets distracted by zombies, then proceeds to have a fist fight with Frank on top of a tank. I'm sure this is how we all saw this zombie game coming to a close, right? Our protagonist hitting somersault kicks on a bald military guy? No? Maybe just me. Military dude falls into zombies, Frank stands on tank and screams. After the credits, some text explains some loose ends, kinda. Frank got the news out, the government admitted to partial blame, but mostly pinned it on some fringe terrorist group. Everyone soon forgot about the zombie incident at the mall in this small town in Colorado. The foster kid Carlito plan was never verified, then it says his belly wasn't full, which I assume they mean Frank, in a reference to Carlito's line earlier about zombies and Americans never having full bellies. Maybe he's a zombie now, who knows. And that's it. That's the true ending, everyone. That took a long time. They started off with such an emphasis on the mystery and unknown of it all, that of course it was going to be a letdown. After you complete the story, you also unlock Infinite Mode. In Infinite Mode, your only goal is to survive as long as possible in the mall. Your health slowly goes down over time, and there aren't any areas where the health spawns repeatedly like in the main game. Every NPC that was in the main game is present in Infinite Mode as an enemy. When you defeat them, they drop a box full of loot. As an example, when you start off, the first guy you're likely to encounter is Otis, who will catch you off guard if you're not expecting to fight every NPC. I remember the first time I tried this mode when I was much younger, I was very shocked that Otis started smacking me with a frying pan. It's a really fun mode, but it still suffers from a similar problem the main game had. If you're good enough, you just sometimes stand around doing nothing. I had a full inventory, plenty of healing items, the magazine to make those healing items better, and was holed up at the gun shop with plenty of extra guns. There was no point to explore, so I just waited there. I got bored and stopped playing it. Now that the story and infinite modes are covered, we'll finish up with the technical difficulties. For real this time. Seeing how Dead Rising was trying to push boundaries as an early title on new hardware, there of course are plenty of limitations and workarounds that had to be implemented to get things to work. But there are also some issues that stem from strange design decisions. Some of those are more annoying than others. First, I'll start with one that has been fixed on PC. When playing it on the Xbox 360 at launch, I remember load screens being absolutely terrible. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I don't think so. This made going back and forth to grab straggling survivors even more of a pain. With how frequently I used the shortcut in the bathroom, if the load times were still bad, I could easily see my playtime increasing a few hours. This one really isn't their fault, but the draw distance is really bad, especially when you're in a vehicle in the park. However, it also happens indoors. Seeing a huge patch of the mall with no zombies in it, getting excited, then they all pop in is kind of annoying. This kind of goes along with the next issue I have as well. So one of their main goals had to have been zombies infesting every inch of the mall. I've already said I don't understand how this many zombies can even be in one place, since the town isn't very big to begin with, but there's another way they made sure zombies were present everywhere you look, and it's much more annoying. Zombies will respawn pretty frequently. I understand them respawning when you leave an area and come back, but they even repopulate when you're in the same plaza. This gets extremely irritating when you're trying to clear a path for survivors. If you go too far trying to take down any zombie that could be in your way, go back to the survivor, turn around, oh look, all the zombies are back. This exact scenario happens with the twin sisters. When you find them, one is standing in the pond surrounded by zombies. I carefully took all of them down, barely any zombies near her. I turn around for a brief moment, look back, and they're all there again. My guess is this trick was put in so you could take a car and drive in the tunnels over and over to kill zombies as much as you like. I understand it, but I don't like it. There's a similar but opposite issue when it comes to survivors. I didn't know this when playing. I had to look this one up since I wasn't able to figure out how to activate a certain scoop. There can only be 8 survivors present at once in the mall. Not 8 survivors in a plaza, not 8 survivors with Frank at a time, not 8 survivors that you found and are still alive, 8 potential survivors total altogether. It doesn't matter if they haven't been discovered yet, it doesn't matter if they're for a side quest scoop, and it doesn't matter if a boss needs to be killed before they even appear. For the Sean boss fight, he has 5 hostages. I wasn't able to get this scoop because I had random amount of survivors scattered all across the mall. Gil was in the food court, I had 3 hostages left over from the Cliff fight in the abandoned store, the Paul Carson boss fight had 2 hostages, plus he can be saved as well. 3 from the hostages in the store, 3 from the Paul Carson fight, and 1 from Gil hanging around. Of course the Sean boss fight couldn't spawn. I think the game prioritizing the other survivors and scenarios over the Sean boss fight is particularly bad, since the cultists and the raincoats have been in the mall for the past day. There's a block of time that there are no zombies in the movie theater area at all, just cultists. You can even go into the boss fight room, but nothing is there. Just the sword lodged into the mannequin like before, that you can't grab. It's very annoying to me that this room is abandoned, the door is locked, and you can't grab the sword. It's like the stage was set, everything was ready, the only thing missing is the game allowing for the cutscene to play. All because it has 5 survivors. Missing out on scoops, depending on the situation, is already nonsensical, like when you miss out on certain story events. However, the game has no idea how to handle when you barely miss a scoop, and I mean barely. Kent was supposed to be upstairs in Paradise Plaza for his photography side quest. I'm in the plaza when the scoop expires. He just keels over. You can even hear him scream out as he dies. So the game just killed him because I was late. Immersion shattered. After you've managed to escort a lot of survivors into the safe area, it turns into a zoo. The noise is just rampant with people shouting, crying, whimpering, and yelling. It just gets louder the more survivors you save, and they never shut up.
No!
All right.
No!
What happened?
The dialogue that isn't voice acted is implemented in a very strange way. With the transceiver and talking to someone, you have to press a button to activate the text box first. However, there's no button to advance the dialogue further, you just have to wait, meaning you might have to stand in one place talking to a survivor, waiting until all of their dialogue is finished before you can keep going. The Japanese tourists were the worst with this, as you have to wait for them to finish their entire conversation, then talk to them one more time to confirm them coming with you. With the transceiver, Otis will call you with new scoops seemingly with no restrictions. He can call you when you're in the middle of a horde of zombies, or even in a boss fight. When you answer, you need to wait for the entire dialogue to go through to finish. If it gets cut off by you being attacked, he just calls again and yells at you for cutting him off and starts over. This makes you spend even more time listening to his call, avoiding zombies or a boss while you do it. It's pretty frustrating. If you can't answer his calls, like when I was in the fight with Isabella, he won't call after a while, meaning that scoop he wanted to tell you about is gone forever. Such a weird way to handle side quests. The last thing I'll touch on might not be popular, but I feel I had to address it since it made me pretty uncomfortable my whole playtime. The way the developers view women is pretty degrading and just insulting at times. I imagine not many women were present when writing the story or making the animations, and it shows. Throughout the story and the cutscenes, you've already seen how many legs, cleavage, and ass shots there are of Jessie and Isabella. Of course, you also saw that Jessie is wearing heels even though she's Brad's backup. But outside of the main story, there's still a lot here. The Joe boss fight. Remember how I said I would talk about this again later on? This cutscene is just gross. I'm assuming Joe is threatening to rape the girls. She's going up and down on their bodies with her nightstick, calling them skanks and such. Was this necessary? If you're going to make psychopaths disgustingly crazy, I think you need to provide enough time to flesh out their characters to make their demise worthwhile. She's a perfect example of how every optional psychopath besides Cliff and Kent are just so one-dimensional. This just feels so random and unrelated to anything else in the game. There's a woman you can save who just lost her baby. She said she had the baby with her in the mall and she watched the zombies eat the baby alive. Frank says, "What, you want to stick around with them? With the ones that ate your little girl?" And she gets up, you carry her back, and she says, "I guess I'll have to do enough living for the both of us now." What? I don't think the developers understand what they're writing. If a parent watched their infant child get eaten alive, I doubt they'd have the will to go on, much less say something so asinine like, "Do enough living for the both of us." That's what you say when your sibling dies from something not horrifying, not when your infant child gets eaten in front of you. I'm going to reference a previous point about suicide here. Extra warning in case you want to skip 20 seconds ahead. As ridiculous and pedantic as this point might sound, I think this would have been a time it would make sense for a survivor to commit suicide. The guy who ended up following through with it had a hurt shoulder. This mother's life is over and she's scarred forever. Instead, she's fine, no big deal. If none of that convinced you, that's fine. There are two more examples that are gameplay related and are so much worse. All of the in-shaped zombie women have the capability to eat your crotch out. Literally, on their knees, in the blowjob position, eating your dick. They're the only zombies that will do this. None of the men zombies do this, and even the out-of-shape women zombies don't do this. Literally, the only ones any horny, edgy teenager could think is hot are the only ones that get in that position. The few times where they don't do the crotch grab are when it's the random chance QuickTime event. If it's a regular grab, every single time they will eat your dick. They also 69 the other male survivors. If it's a girl survivor, it's the neck and legs and arms. If it's a male zombie on a male survivor, neck, legs, arm, etc. If it's a girl zombie on a male survivor, it will always be this 69 position. This is just blatant and ridiculously pathetic. It also just doesn't even make any sense. Are they trying to imply that women are hornier and keep their sexual desires even when zombified? What benefit does this add to the experience? I don't think it adds anything, and it only took me out of the game time and time again. As shitty as that is, there's one thing that's even worse. To prop up the camera and photography mechanics in the game, there are a few genre types your photos can be in. One of them is erotica. When you use the magazine that shows you all of the opportunities for these types of photos, it gets really disgusting. Literally pink stickers on women's bodies, encouraging you to get pictures of their cleavage, thongs, and even between their legs. I realize this game was made in the mid-2000s, and it might not represent any of the staff's current outlook on women. I just couldn't not point this out. It's embarrassing. And before anyone pulls the argument, you're worried about the game being too sexual and explicit when you can chop off zombie limbs and decapitate them and whatever, stop. If Dead Rising actually wanted to include sexual themes, that's fine. Sex can be in video games, but this isn't that. This is appealing to a very specific demographic in a very unhealthy way. That's kind of an unfortunate note to end the video on, so I'll try to make up for it. Dead Rising is legitimately one of my favorite games. It has some stumbles, and those stumbles mainly come about from two different sources. One, from trying to push boundaries while having to make concessions like the 8 survivors at a time, survivor AI being dog shit, and the zombies respawning. One, just a misguided and sometimes awkward direction they chose to take the story, its progression, and its view on women. Even though the game has quite a few valleys, they really aren't that low. Comparatively, the peaks of the game aren't as plentiful, but they reach so much higher than a lot of games that came out around this time. The simple freedom of contained exploration, the fun gameplay mechanics, and the hundreds of unique items and weapons you can use to kill zombies, those add up to make a great experience on their own, but you also have the mall itself, which has tremendous character from the way the plazas are laid out and connected, the differences between every area, and the music playing in the background to top it all off. There's a magical nostalgia to this game that hasn't worn off on me quite yet, and I suspect I will continue to replay Dead Rising long into the future. Thanks for watching, everyone. This was a pretty long one. This was my first time trying to go through an entire story of a game. I don't know how well it will come across, so let me know if you guys are cool with it. I don't really know how beneficial it is for people to hear me literally going through the whole plot and share thoughts on it. So what's next, you ask? Well, don't hold me to it, but I'm trying to get 2 more similar videos out this month since it's October. We'll see how that goes. I'm at least trying to get 1 more out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to get updated when I put out new videos. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.